Log entry 2847. Chief Medical Officer Ren Sar of the Galactic Health and Safety Commission. Oh stars above, where do I even begin with this disaster? Ahem. Let me start by saying that I have worked in xenomedicine for over 30 stellar cycles, and never, I mean never, have I seen such an absolutely ridiculous chain of events unfold. The fact that a simple human sunburn managed to cause the evacuation of an entire space station and trigger a Class 1 radiation emergency response still makes me laugh until my secondary breathing tubes hurt. So, for the official record and my personal amusement, here's exactly how one slightly crispy human turned the Nexus-7 Trading Station into a complete circus. It all started when Security Officer Marcus Chen, our resident human, decided to spend his off-cycle lounging by the artificial beach in Recreation Dome 3. Now, most species know better than to expose themselves to direct UV radiation, simulated or otherwise. But humans, those crazy Deathworlders, literally pay money to lie in it. Can you believe that? They call it tanning, deliberately irradiating their outer membrane until it changes color. Anyway, Marcus apparently fell asleep while working on his tan. Humans have the strangest phrases. The station's UV simulators are calibrated for standard council species, which means they're about half the intensity that Earth norm humans are used to. So naturally, our brilliant Deathworlder forgot to adjust the safety protocols and ended up dozing for nearly 4 hours under the artificial sun. When Station Medical Officer Pix Lu found him during her routine safety inspection, Marcus's exposed skin had turned an alarming shade of red. Now, Pix Lu is an excellent doctor, but like most Centauri, she had never actually seen a human sunburn before. All she knew was that one of her crew members had mysteriously turned bright red and was radiating heat. Emergency. Emergency, I can still hear her panicked voice over the station comm system. Possible radiation contamination in Recreation Dome 3. All personnel evacuate immediately. The next thing you know, hazmat-suited emergency responders are swarming the dome while poor Marcus is trying and failing to explain that he's fine, just a little crispy. But of course, nobody's listening to the supposedly radiation-poisoned Deathworlder who's clearly delirious. Station Chief Val Thar, who really should know better after working with humans for 5 cycles, immediately triggered emergency protocols. Quarantine barriers slammed down. Decontamination systems activated. The station's AI began a full radiation sweep while broadcasting safety warnings in 17 different languages. And there's Marcus wrapped in emergency radiation shielding, which he kept trying to remove because, and I quote, "It's making me sweat like a pig in a sauna," another bizarre human idiom, being rushed to the medical bay by a team of very concerned professionals in full hazmat gear. Here's where it gets even better. News of the radiation incident reached the Galactic Health and Safety Commission before anyone bothered to actually consult the human medical database. By the time I arrived with the emergency response team, 3 separate containment ships were already in orbit around Nexus-7. Picture this scene: I walk into medical bay expecting to find a critically irradiated patient, only to see Marcus sitting on an examination table, covered in some sort of white cream aloe vera. Apparently humans keep it around specifically for when they burn themselves like this, trying not to laugh while Pix Lu frantically waves various scanning devices at him. "With all due respect, Chief Medical Officer," he says to me, barely containing his grin, "I really just need some painkillers and maybe a cold shower." But no one's buying it. After all, his skin is hot to the touch, bright red, and beginning to blister in some places. Classic radiation symptoms, right? The fact that he's completely lucid and trying to explain the concept of sunscreen is clearly just proof of how delirious he's become. It took 2 hours of arguing with the emergency response team, 3 separate consultations with human medical experts, and finally a direct call to Earth's Galactic Embassy before everyone finally accepted that no, Marcus wasn't going to start glowing in the dark or contaminate the station. By that point, the story had already spread across half the sector. "Human survives catastrophic radiation exposure," the news feed screamed. "Deathworlder immunity reaches new heights," and my personal favorite, "Is human skin the key to radiation-proof armor?" The Researchers Guild has already submitted 17 different proposals to study human dermal radiation responses. The Military Development Council wants to know if we can replicate the human radiation immunity for battlefield applications. And the Insurance Adjustment Board is having an absolute meltdown trying to figure out how to classify voluntary radiation exposure for cosmetic purposes. Marcus, meanwhile, spent the next 3 cycles applying aloe vera, peeling, which caused another minor panic when someone noticed him shedding his radiation-damaged skin and telling increasingly elaborate versions of the story to anyone who would listen. "You should have seen their faces," he keeps saying, when I told them humans do this for fun on their beaches back home. The really hilarious part: this whole incident has actually led to some interesting discoveries about human physiology. It turns out their skin has evolved some fascinating repair mechanisms to deal with UV damage. The Military Development Council might actually be onto something with their armor research, even if they completely misunderstood the initial situation. As for station policy changes, well, Recreation Dome 3 now has a special human-only tanning section with appropriate warning signs in multiple languages. My personal favorite is the Zentari translation, which roughly reads, "Warning Deathworlders deliberately irradiating themselves within, do not be alarmed." The Human Embassy sent us an official guide to human sunburns, complete with pictures and severity scales, which is now required reading for all medical personnel in the sector. They also included a rather sarcastic note about adding sunscreen to the station's standard medical supplies. And Marcus? He got a formal commendation for maintaining composure during a perceived emergency situation, and a formal reprimand for failing to properly inform medical staff about voluntary radiation exposure protocols. He's framed both documents and hung them side by side in his quarters. The whole thing has become something of a joke among the station crew. Whenever anyone gets too worked up about a minor situation, someone inevitably asks if it's as bad as the Great Human Sunburn Panic. That usually puts things in perspective. I've learned a few valuable lessons from this whole fiasco. Always check the xenobiology database before calling in an emergency response team. If a human says they're fine, despite looking like they've been cooked, they probably are fine. Never underestimate humanity's ability to turn potentially lethal environmental conditions into recreational activities. Keep plenty of aloe vera in stock. For the official record, I am formally recommending that all Galactic Health and Safety Commission personnel receive updated training on human environmental adaptations. I'm also suggesting we revise our radiation emergency protocols to include a specific check if it's just a human being human. Step. And log entry. Personal addendum: Marcus has just informed me that humans have something called tanning competitions where they deliberately compete to see who can achieve the darkest skin tone. I'm not including this in my official report because, quite frankly, I don't think the Commission is ready for that information yet. Secondary addendum: the Researchers Guild has apparently discovered that humans also deliberately expose themselves to high temperatures in enclosed spaces called saunas and hot yoga studios. I'm scheduling my retirement effective immediately. Let someone else deal with explaining that to the Health and Safety Commission. Final addendum: before submitting this report, I showed it to Marcus for fact-checking. He couldn't stop laughing and suggested I add a note about something called spray tans, a process where humans deliberately spray themselves with chemicals to simulate radiation damage. I'm not adding that information. There are some things the galaxy just isn't ready to know. End report. Note from Station AI: this report has been automatically flagged for immediate transmission to the Galactic Research Academy's Humans or Space Australians documentation project. Current submission category: yet another reason why humans are terrifying. Additional note from Station AI: Security Officer Marcus Chen has requested copies of all surveillance footage from this incident for posterity. Request pending review by Station Chief Val Thar, who is still recovering from his stress-induced molting episode. Final note from Station AI: the station's gift shop has begun selling commemorative t-shirts featuring a cartoon human turning red under a sun with the caption, "I survived the great Nexus-7 radiation panic and all I got was this lousy mutation." Security Officer Chen receives 10% of all sales proceeds. Transmission complete. Security override: this document has been classified as simultaneously hilarious and horrifying by the Galactic Documentation Office. Access restricted to medical personnel and xenobiologists with level 3 or higher. Humans are weird clearance. Supplementary report: the aftermath, how one sunburn changed galactic policy. As if the initial incident wasn't enough to document, I feel compelled to add this supplementary report detailing the absolutely ridiculous chain of events that followed our little radiation emergency. The ripple effects have spread so far through galactic society that I'm starting to think we'll never hear the end of it. First, there was the emergency summit of the Galactic Health and Safety Commission. Picture this: 300 of the most distinguished medical professionals in the galaxy gathered in one room to discuss sunscreen. I'm not making this up. The entire first day was dedicated to understanding the concept of SPF and why humans have categorized their radiation protection into numbers. The Volturn delegation was particularly puzzled by the concept of tanning oils. So, asked Chief Medical Officer Tez Ran, their scales practically bristling with confusion, humans have invented substances to block harmful radiation, and then created other substances to allow more radiation through. And they choose which to use based on their desired shade of skin damage. Marcus, who we'd invited as our human expert, just sat there grinning while various alien species tried to process this information. The expression on his face reminded me of something humans call a Cheshire cat, though I'm still not entirely sure what that is. Then came the fashion industry's response. Apparently, the concept of deliberately changing one's skin color for aesthetic purposes was too intriguing to ignore. The latest trending styles in the Galactic fashion hub now include radiation sheet patterns that simulate the appearance of human sunburn patterns. Yes, you read that correctly, beings are now paying good credits to look like they've been mildly irradiated. The Hospitality Guild wasn't far behind. They've started marketing human-style relaxation centers across the galaxy, complete with artificial UV chambers. Each chamber comes with a massive warning sign that reads, "For human use, only non-human patrons will be required to sign 17 different liability waivers and undergo a psychiatric evaluation." The insurance industry is still in chaos. They've had to create an entirely new category of coverage called voluntary radiation exposure insurance with a special subsection for human recreational activities. The paperwork includes gems like "I understand that the policyholder may intentionally expose themselves to radiation for purposes of changing skin pigmentation, and the company is not liable for any psychological distress caused to non-human observers." The Military Development Council has made some genuinely fascinating discoveries, though. It turns out that studying human cellular repair mechanisms after UV exposure has led to breakthroughs in radiation-resistant materials. They're calling it Project Sunscreen, much to Marcus's amusement. Speaking of Marcus, he's become something of a celebrity in certain scientific circles. The number of research teams requesting interviews about his survival of catastrophic radiation exposure is getting ridiculous. He started charging consultation fees and donating them to what he calls the Station Barbecue Fund, though he's having trouble explaining the concept of deliberately cooking food outdoors to most species. The Educational Board has mandated new additions to all xenobiology curricula. There's now an entire module dedicated to human environmental interactions, why everything you think you know about radiation is wrong. The introduction video features footage from our incident, complete with helpful annotations explaining that the human is not, in fact, dying. The Galactic Documentation Office has created a new classification system specifically for human-related incidents. They've dubbed it the Wait, They Do What scale, ranging from level 1 mildly concerning to level 10 reality-breaking. Our Sunburn incident has been officially rated as a level 7, fundamentally alters understanding of species capabilities. The Researchers Guild's latest publication includes no fewer than 37 papers analyzing different aspects of the incident. My personal favorite is titled "Voluntary Radiation Exposure as a Social Activity, a Comprehensive Study of Human Recreational Practices That Should Not Be Possible." The Diplomatic Corps has issued new guidelines for all first contact scenarios. They now include a specific section labeled "Warning Humans May Engage in Activities That Appear Suicidal but Are Actually Recreational. Do Not Panic." Even the entertainment industry has gotten involved. There's now a popular Hollywood series called Deathworld Diaries where they dramatize various human behaviors that terrify other species. The Sunburn incident was their pilot episode. Marcus keeps complaining that the actor playing him was too dramatic about the pain level. Though I maintain that screaming "it burns but it's fine" while being chased by medical personnel was pretty accurate to the original event. The station gift shop has expanded its merchandise line. Besides the t-shirts they now sell plush toys of a red-faced human giving a thumbs up. Coffee mugs, another human invention we're still trying to understand with "Don't Panic, it's just a sunburn" printed on them. Novelty radiation detectors that play a human song called "Here Comes the Sun" when activated. Action figures of Marcus in various stages of sunburn, complete with tiny bottles of aloe vera. The station's AI has developed what Marcus calls a sense of humor about the whole thing. It now announces sunset in the recreation dome with "Attention all humans, choreographed radiation exposure period is now ending. Please ensure all voluntary cellular damage is complete." We've had to add a specific section to the station's orientation briefing for new arrivals. It's titled "Common Human Activities That May Appear Life-Threatening But Are Actually Normal." Sunbathing is right up there with their habits of consuming ethanol for pleasure and jumping into bodies of water for fun. The Psychological Support Unit has been overwhelmed with appointments from various species trying to cope with the revelation that humans intentionally damage and repair their outer membrane for aesthetic purposes. They've had to bring in specialists in human behavioral rationalization. I've been asked to present at next cycle's Galactic Medical Conference. My presentation is titled Understanding Human Radiation Responses, a Case Study and Why Traditional Safety Protocols May Not Apply. I'm still trying to figure out how to explain beach volleyball without causing another panic. The really ironic part? After all this chaos, all these studies, all these policy changes and new regulations, humans are still out there, lying in the sun, getting sunburned, and laughing about it. As Marcus likes to say, sometimes you've got to get burned to learn. Though I'm pretty sure he just made that up to sound wise. Final thought, perhaps the most telling outcome of this whole situation is that it barely registers on the scale of weird human things anymore. Now, when someone reports a human doing something that seems impossibly dangerous, the first question is always yes, but are they enjoying it? End of supplementary report. Station AI final commentary. This incident has been added to the official things we've learned about humans database under multiple categories, including voluntary radiation exposure, recreational self-damage, and reasons why other species need therapy. Transmission actually complete this time. P.S. Marcus has just informed me that humans also deliberately expose themselves to artificial UV radiation in devices called tanning beds during their winter seasons when natural radiation is less available. I'm officially done trying to understand them. End of all reports. Seriously this time. No more addendums. I need a drink.